everyone. I'm Noor Kluti, aka Mufakkira. Welcome to the Overdue Review. This is our third episode. We are the book club for music, and as always, I am joined by my friend and co-host Declan. Hello, Declan.
Hey, Noor.
Okay, so as you know, on this podcast, we do deep dives and retrospective discussions on albums month to month. And this time around, we're going to be doing Anderson .Paak's new album, Oxnard, which was released in November through Aftermath Entertainment. But unlike the last episode, we're going to be doing a comparison to Anderson's second studio album, Malibu, which was a 2016 release, and really his breakthrough into mainstream culture. So let's first start with the critical consensus. What did people think of this album, Declan?
People love it. I think generally people really love this album. We're looking at numbers, and just for clarity's sake, we've converted all of these review scores into a simple 10-point system. Metacritic sits at 8.6 out of 10. Pitchfork, same score. Anthony Fantano, a little against the grain with a 7 out of 10. Consequence of Sound, roughly 9 out of 10. And Rolling Stone, a 6 out of 10.
To be clear, just about the production behind the album, the executive producer on this album was Adrian Miller. And there were several features, including Schoolboy Q and VJ Chicago. Overall, the album was, let's say, a neo-soul urban jazz experience. So what do you think?
For me, it was like the epitome of pop rap and neo-soul. It was like...
Yeah.
It was 2016's like trendiest music boiled down to like, you know, the finest point. It was
concentrated.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. So me personally, I'm biased. And Declan knows this because I'm a huge Anderson .Paak fan. So my general impressions of Malibu is that it's freaking awesome. And it's hard for me to criticize the album. And I'm really partial to the Anderson .Paak stable sound, which is something that's going to be relevant for us when we look at Oxnard, because you'll notice if you've listened to Oxnard that Anderson really wavers between that stable sound that Malibu is concentrated with and something new, which we'll discuss when we talk about Oxnard. So, like I said, I love this album. But what about you, Declan? What do you feel about this album? What are your general impressions?
Definitely solid. We've talked about it at length off of this podcast, and it's become emblematic of a genre that I very quickly got sick of, but it's the best of that genre. So
I think that's very well put, actually. It was definitely overplayed, I feel, certain points. Specific songs like Heart Don't Stand a Chance was definitely a hit.
But the thing is, it's overplayed because, and I put this all over my notes, you could put this album on in almost any scenario. Like, it's so palatable. That's why it's overplayed, because it's just like this, it's like a fucking playlist. It's so well curated.
Yeah.
Like, that's why people just like flock to it.
I think that, you know, the skill of album curation is often underlooked.
Oh, hugely understated.
Yeah. So, and this is part of the reason that I'm so drawn to Malibu, because I can sit through it and it's a seamless transition between song to song to song, because frankly, most of the songs because they fit within, they're all the same style. They're all very much repetitions of the same style, very accurate and strong repetitions of that style, but still a repetition.
Right. But while they're so cohesive, they're kind of like loosely related though. Like, it's not like Oxnard has this very sort of streamlined vision of what it's trying to create, and it falters. But this is just like, it's like a collection of greatest hits almost. Like, these songs aren't like this very focused thing. They're just like totally cohesive, and it never stands out, never jumps out. But it's... Yes,
that's true. But if we were going to talk about the strength of Malibu versus the strength of Oxnard, I would say that Malibu is more about Anderson .Paak's life, whereas Oxnard is really an intellectual conquest, or it feels that way because it's such a strong thesis. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, I don't know if this is what Paak's trying to do, but of the like California trilogy, I think this one actually makes me feel like it's capturing a place sonically and audibly. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
As much as I love Venice because it has like a certain charm to it, and Malibu because it's so well curated, neither of them really gave me the sort of transportive experience that like Oxnard gives me. It's like, if you're making a trilogy about these like Californian places, like that's the one that most screams like I don't know, that Cali vibe to me. Like, even
Yeah.
if it is like this hyper stylized version.
No, absolutely. But content-wise, I do find that Anderson .Paak is really touching on more. I mean, except maybe for the exception of 6 Summers, which was an attempt at a politically controversial piece of music. I would say that the songs in Anderson .Paak's album Malibu were far more relatable than any of the songs in Oxnard. But look, I don't want to get too distracted on the ways that Oxnard is. Well, I don't want to forget to mention the songs that we like from Malibu.
Yeah.
So personally, I would say songs like The Bird, Without You, and Come Down are some of my favorite songs of the album, for the reasons that I've just explained. One particular song that I also love, but recognize that it's not incredible, is, Your Prime. What about you, Declan? What are your favorites, not favorites?
I agree with you that The Bird and Without You are definitely up there. I fucking love The Season, Carry Me, Put Me Through. I mean, there's a lot of really standout tracks on there. Your Prime just reminds me too much of like that Mika song, Grace Kelly. Like there's something, that verse sounds like an indie pop song.
I forgot about that song.
Yeah, that's a throwback.
I love that song.
Well, maybe that's why you love it.
Yeah.
But for me, that's the only song that I almost find like outwardly bad. Like I think the album rarely ever dips into bad. It just dips into filler. But fucking Parking Lot.
Sorry, go ahead.
Parking Lot, those synths are so fucking disgraceful that I'd say it's a bad song.
Of the album.
And then that verse reminding me of Grace Kelly. Those are the only moments on the album where I'm like, okay, that's actually bad.
Okay, well, clearly the Grace Kelly thing is your problem.
That's totally subjective. This is all opinion based.
No, I wouldn't say that it's all opinion based. I would say that
Parking Lot is genuinely underdeveloped.
Yes, songwriting wise, it's underdeveloped, 100%. Overall, let's just, what are the strengths of Malibu? Summarized? Bullet points, Declan, go.
Strengths of Malibu, like the best curation. It is like what we were talking with the Mick Jenkins album last month, is that this is best in class. It's not trying to reinvent this genre. It just like, it closed the book on it. It was like, all right, you guys think you can do this? Like, I'm going to fucking do it better than any of
100%.
you. Yeah, and he nailed it. And that's great. I don't know. Outside of that, like, it's solid songwriting, but I think it's those two things are its like biggest strengths that carry it through to such like a high rating on all these reviews. It's just like, so it was very meticulously curated, and there was so much effort and care that went into these very overlooked and understated parts of making an album, and it paid off. And I'm fucking glad that someone did that.
Honestly, I could not have said that better myself, friend. I'd like to add that it'd be interesting for us to later on talk about the value judgment of whether we as listeners want an album that is sticking to a staple sound, a sound that we've described here as Anderson .Paak's master sound. This is what he's good at. This is what he knows, and both musically and performance-wise, it is him and his personality. It comes from his heart, like I said earlier. So do we want that as listeners, or do we want them to explore, take risks like Anderson .Paak took in Oxnard? So we'll talk about that later, but that would be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's like how everyone's going to compare Kendrick's works to Pimp a Butterfly. I think everyone's going to compare Paak's stuff to Malibu.
That is
like
that is a really
people
good point.
get into a way of thinking. So we'll get into that later. Yeah.
Okay. So as we said, the Oxnard, both Declan and I agreed that it was definitely an evolution and a risk to a degree, or definitely Anderson .Paak trying something new, something different, something that is not a Malibu number 2. Tell us about the critical consensus, Declan.
So Oxnard, almost across the board, received slightly more critical reviews. Pitchfork gave it a 7 out of 10. Metacritic 7.9. Anthony Fantano went up to an 8. Consequence of Sound went to an 8.5. Rolling Stones stayed the same at a 6. So across the board, worse than Malibu.
I mean, but
except for Fantano.
Fine, but people were expecting a lot more at that point.
Yes, exactly. Expectations were huge.
Exactly. So it is harder to give someone that's established and in the mainstream a 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 than it is someone that's just entered the mainstream, which was what Paak was when he released Malibu.
Yeah, Malibu is a huge statement. So people were like, okay, we take a notice.
We should note the production on this album, executively produced by Dr. Dre.
And it shows.
It 100% shows. Thank you, Declan. Other producers on the album were Ninth Wonder and Mel. Personally, I am a fan of the Ninth Wonder influence on this album, and we'll get into that later. Features include Snoop Dogg, Pusha T, J. Cole, Kaja Bonnet. Let's start with our general impressions. Declan, go.
I think I'm more favorable to this album than you are. That was not the case at first, but like I said earlier, I think this one really captures the essence of what he was trying to do with this whole, like, I don't know, musical portrait of a location or a lifestyle. Like, it took a while to grow on me, but once I finally got it, I think I warmed up to it a lot more. I'm favorable towards it. I think people were harsh on it.
When I first heard Oxnard, I was initially disappointed. It was like a guttural reaction. Because I was really, it's been 2 years or 3 years that I've been waiting for another set of hits that I loved as much as I did in Malibu. And my first reaction was, Paak, you know, I know that you're a great musician, but it doesn't mean that you have to master every single genre. We know that you can, doesn't mean you should. I felt that Oxnard jumped from style to style without giving pause to the listener or building up to those jumps. With that said, I have a lot of respect for this album, and unlike, well, like you, I apologize, it definitely warmed up to me, but I warmed up to it on an intellectual and critical perspective. I have more respect for this album because of the risk it took and the innovation it attempted.
Yeah, I think the whole jumping from style to style thing was like an accident in a way. I know, like, Pitchfork pointed that out, and I let that color my impression of the album at first, but listening to it over and over again, particularly for this review, I feel like it's a bit more focused and consistent than people give it credit for. And, like, I have to give props to Fantano for kind of pointing that out. Is like, it does have a very
clear
sort of
vision.
Yes, it does. And, like, the songs that falter, I don't like them, and I'm not going to defend them, but I will kind of concede that they do fit in that vision. They just poorly executed. And
I'd like to make a distinction between two words that you used. You said focused and consistent. I would say that the album is focused.
Yes.
It is not consistent. It's loyal to its thesis.
Yes.
To a degree. But, like, you have 70s revival songs like The Chase that we both adore.
Yeah, The Chase is awesome.
But then you have Who Are You, which is very...
That's like, yeah, that's kind of like one of the more, like, gangsta G-funk. Like, it's just, it's not working.
So, honestly, and I'm not saying this to throw any shade at Dr. Dre, sorry, not Dr. Gray, Dr. Dre. I'm not throwing any shade at you, but it seemed like you and Anderson .Paak were fighting over which song belonged to who and how many songs you could have that were the style that you wanted, how many songs Anderson .Paak could have that he wanted. It felt like it was being torn apart between two very strong musical minds.
Yeah, 100%. That was, like, the big issue for me, is that it sounds like Dre, or I don't know, someone's coming in and being like, look, let's just have a little bit of this, like, you know, it's all West Coast, but this is like a little bit gangster and this one's like funk, and it's like there was two head-butting styles going on, and it just didn't work.
I would not have wanted to be in the studio on days that they were producing songs like Who Are You. I'd like to point that unlike the Mick Jenkins album that we discussed in our last episode, I wouldn't say that the length of this album was in any way a problem for me, although it was 16 tracks.
Yeah, surprisingly. And that's like one of the reasons why I thought the songwriting was so good for the most part, is that you did not feel the length at all. Although
you didn't feel
if
the
Left
length.
to Right wasn't on the album, I'd rate it a lot higher.
I would take 3 songs off the album, personally.
The same, and I think they're the same 3 songs.
You want to go? Say one.
Who are you?
Mansa Musa.
Yeah.
And Left to Right.
Yeah. Easy. You take those 3 off the album, and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I'd rate it so much higher.
I'd rate it so much higher. I'd be comfortable giving it an 8.5.
Yeah, it would be, in the same range as Malibu for me. If those songs didn't exist, it'd be fucking awesome.
Yeah, and you know, it still baffles me though how, I mean, I will, and I when I think about the thesis behind Oxnard, like I said earlier in my general impressions of the album, I have a lot of respect for the amount of thought that Pac puts into his music. You know, I can tell that he's a perfectionist, and you can also tell that Dre is a perfectionist. But songs like, for instance, Anywhere with Snoop Dogg is such a good quality track, and I did not notice it until maybe the fourth time listening through. So I would say that for the good songs on Oxnard, they're really good. What do you think? Do you think it's the case?
Yeah. Well, the big sort of conflict I see with like Oxnard versus Malibu is that like Oxnard is so much better on a micro scale. Like these songs, like there's a lot of attention to the actual songwriting in the good songs. Like they're just a little bit more developed. They're a little bit more careful and meticulous in the way they're structured. But Malibu as a whole seemed like it was given way more care and way more attention as a collection of songs. So that's like the push and pull that's going on there.
And so what do we value more as listeners? The curation of an album or the quality of individual songs? That's a really important question, but it's hard to answer.
I mean, they both have their ups and downs. Like it's hard to make a judgment call on that.
Well, what do you want personally?
I mean, ideally, obviously, I'd want like the songwriting quality of Oxnard's bests with the consistency and the curation of Malibu.
We're talking about Utopia. You're talking about Utopia. I'm talking about
Ideally,
if you had to choose to have only one.
They serve different functions. It's hard to choose. Like for utility's sake, I would have to say Malibu because I could listen to Malibu by myself and enjoy it, and I could play Malibu at parties or in social situations, and it would probably be better received. But I don't listen to Malibu actively like I listen to Oxnard. Like when I'm listening to Oxnard, I'm like, okay,
you're impressed.
I'm following the transitions. I'm listening to the lyrics. When I put on Malibu, like when my favorite songs come on, I'm like, fuck yes, that's awesome. But it's more passive, and that's great for a lot of utilities.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's really a lot easier to listen to Malibu than it is to listen to Oxnard through and through.
But I'm more excited for songs to come up on Oxnard. Like, oh, if I know that Cheers is next, I'm like, yes, great. I can't wait to hear the song.
Really?
I don't really have that feeling for Malibu songs, but I'm just like enjoying it the whole way.
You don't have that feeling in Malibu because you know every thought.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's the other thing is Malibu is like...
Yeah, you got me and I didn't pronounce anything right. What are some songs that you think stand out as the top songs from Oxnard?
Okay, so... Again, Cheers is like, it's lyrically one of the best songs on the album. Like he kind of takes a break from the surface level stuff and he gets very personal. Q-Tip's guest appearance is great. The beat is great. There's like a lot of stuff going on. I always love a beat change. And similar thing, similar reasons. Brothers Keeper, like Pusha T fucking kills it.
Yeah.
And another beat change, which I love. I know you're not as crazy about it, but I think that one feels...
I can't deny that it's good.
Yeah, it just feels like a 70s movie soundtrack. Like I could see people like shooting up at the docks over like a fucking shipment of cocaine
and
or something.
And the sunset is, happening in the background.
It's a tough one to pick a third because I love Head Low, I love Sweet Chick.
I know that
The Chase again. Like they're all awesome.
I know that there is one song that we both like and dislike simultaneously, that being Six Summers. And I'd like to talk about this song.
Yeah, that's probably the big song to talk about from the album.
Yes. Just before I get on Six Summers, I would like to say that my favorite song on Oxnard is Savior's Road. I think it
also
is
a great song.
Yeah, I think it is really the marriage of Malibu's aesthetic and Oxnard aesthetic because it pushes the boundaries a little but stays enough in the staple sound that it satisfies fans like myself.
You could slip that onto Malibu and you'd barely notice it
on
another album.
No, it would stand out a little.
Yeah.
It would stand out.
But I mean, it wouldn't stand out too differently from Lightweight or like Parking Lot.
The opening is peculiar. You don't. I mean, okay, Anderson .Paak has a tendency to use a lot of these like field recording samples, dialogues, right? The field recording or the sample that he uses at the start of Savior's Road really catches your attention as being somewhat experimental until he brings in this like really smooth. I just think Savior's Road is a good example of the marriage between Malibu and Oxnard. That's just my personal opinion. Okay,
yeah,
Declan?
that one seems like the most natural next step.
Yeah. Okay. Six Summers. let's get into it.
Yeah, that's probably the talk about. It's
What do you dislike, firstly?
Okay, that's hard. I hate going in negative, but the lyrics just seem like a day late. Like it's reminiscent of those bands in the punk bands in the early 2000s doing all those like anti-Bush protest songs, and it was just like, okay, this is like after a while they're not saying anything new or interesting, and it almost becomes a bit of a cliche, and it's like
for sure.
it just feels a little forced. And as much like I typically prefer political songs, like I think you can do so much more with them than say like a sex song or a love song, but I would have kind of preferred if this was just as decadent as the rest of the album, to be honest.
No, I agree. And it's a shame because the songwriting on this song, I think, is such a highlight in the album. I mean, the way that it starts off in a sort of like more upbeat, aggressive, urgent manner, and then it switches to that like really smooth riff.
Yeah.
Nothing gonna change, or at least 6. I don't remember the lyrics, but
it's a great song.
And the two sides of the song, I think songwriting wise, it's incredible, and I think it got the most amount of streams out of all the songs on Oxnard. But lines like reform, reform, should have came sooner. I'm like cringing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit like I like the premise and I like the message it's trying to send, but it does feel a little
I don't even
cringy.
care about the message that it has to send.
There's just a lot better songs
Yeah,
saying what he wants to say.
Exactly. It felt like, oh, I have this wonderful beat, this wonderful melody, everything's fire. What should I talk about? Oh, people, if Trump is relevant, let's just talk about Trump.
Yeah, it felt like he was kind of pressured. He felt pressured into be like, well, I should say something about Trump because, like, how can I not? Like, I'm a black artist with a massive platform. I should probably use it, but
yeah, you should have used it better.
Yeah,
or just continue talking about. Yeah,
it just has nothing to do with the rest of the album.
No, but man, do I love that song.
Yeah,
like I don't
exactly.
care what he's saying, the hook, everything. It's just so catchy. The phrasing, catchy. Check, 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 and check.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite to listen to. Like, it's
but I'm not moved at all.
Yeah, exactly.
If you were trying to move me, I'm not moved.
It does not, move me or activate me politically in any way. But I appreciate the attempt, but that's what he needs to work on. If he's going to release an album about fucking drugs and sex and all that good stuff, if you're going to make a political statement on it, you got to do a lot more work to get me to be like, okay, I'm going to take you seriously on this matter.
Exactly. Honestly, one of the most personal songs on this album is Head Low. Like
yeah,
it just,
exactly. That's the song about getting a fucking blowjob in a car.
But he does it so well.
Yeah.
He has that recording. I don't know how he got that recording at the end of the song of like somebody
just go
choking.
around.
And it's him talking about it the whole time. But like, my question is, who's choking on what in that recording? Like, I'd like to know. Was that live?
They're choking on dick. What do you think?
Was that live? If so, that girl, poor girl. Anyway, on to our final thoughts. Declan.
So Oxnard succeeds as an evolution, but it is fraught with errors that Malibu didn't have, and we're kind of forced to grapple with the fact of whether or not we're happy with it evolving in this clear and tangible direction while failing in things that Malibu had already succeeded at. It's a big push and pull. So what do we feel? What's our verdict?
Okay, so basically what I'm taking this question as is, are we glad for this specific evolution? Are we glad for it? Do we value an album that is consistent with a staple sound, or do we want them to take risks?
Obviously, we have examples in music history of bands that deliver a consistent, or artists that deliver a consistent staple sound album after album, and like they both have their own value. Like AC/DC, like no one would take anything away from them, but like the common criticism is it was the same album every time, and people love those albums. And I think taking a risk artistically is absolutely necessary if you want to be someone who's
still relevant.
Yeah, you can be relevant and release the same stuff over and over again. Like that's been proven by countless pop artists or of any genre.
Yeah.
But if you want to be one of the front runners of innovation, obviously, you have to kind of take artistic risks, and we wouldn't have gotten some rap songs or J Dilla's Donuts and stuff if people weren't willing.
Or To Pimp a Butterfly, really.
Or To Pimp a Butterfly, exactly. Like there's a lot of landmark albums where people are like, well, yeah, I know I can do this amazingly well, but I want to do something different. And
Yeah,
I think
and he has to
naturally
keep challenging himself. That's
Yeah.
also something that I want him to do for himself.
there is
as a-
more prestige associated with that, right? So there's more prestige associated with being a pioneer, but I think there's no shame in re-releasing the same thing. But I'm glad Paak obviously is trying to.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't.
Yeah,
I'm glad he didn't because I'm sitting here and talking about it and looking forward to how he's going to challenge me next. Because I don't want to. I would rather feel this than be disappointed with something that wasn't intellectually challenging.
yeah. I mean, he could release 5 Malibus, and I think people would be happy and enjoy it. But if he does something different and eventually stumbles upon something great and innovative, that is a much better legacy to have.
Yes, and also he's loyal to the listen. Okay, so as I distinguish often is that there are listeners like ourselves who are active listeners, and there are listeners who just want listen to music passively, which Malibu caters to very well. I think he's being loyal to the more serious listeners by releasing something like Oxnard.
Yeah, it was a statement of intent. He's like, really, like, he got our attention with Malibu, and then he was really trying to follow up with Oxnard. It's a shame it missed in some regards, but, you know, good on him for
Trying.
really, yeah.
100%.
Exactly. And
Okay.
he delivered in a lot of
$100.
those songs. He really delivered. So let's not discount the successes.
No. Just go back and listen to Oxnard 4 or 5 times. Trust me, you will start to see all the little secret gems of this album. So if we had to put a number on each of these albums, and how it started versus how it is now, what would yours be?
Okay, for Malibu, probably start at like an 8 or so, and then it definitely dropped down to a 7.5 due to filler songs like Celebrate and Parking Lot kind of killing it for me.
I would say Malibu would have started as an 8.5/9 for me. And now having experienced Oxnard, I think it would drop down to a 7.7. What about Oxnard?
Oxnard definitely started low for me, like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
And I bumped it up about a 7.5-ish. Yeah, it definitely improved over time.
I would actually put it higher than a 7 for the how I feel now. So I would say that Oxnard started at a 6, and having really evaluated the quality of the songwriting, I would put it at a 7.7. All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed our elaborate and passionate discussion today. Let us know if you want us to be more passionate and candid in the future, or if you prefer the simple and structured episode like the one that we did about Meg Jenkins. Either way, tell us your thoughts. We are here to listen. You can find this episode on every major podcast platform. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, anything that gives us, more advantage on the algorithm. You can find this also on my website, mufakkirah.com, MUFFAKIRAH. For now, good night, good morning, good afternoon, and that's it.